Had a fantastic weekend, as good as it could be, right? So, when we were last together, we were talking about manifest destiny. Who could tell me just briefly what manifest destiny is?
They were like, God said we could take this on.
It is the belief by Americans that that God intended for our country to be a coast-to-coast nation, at least a coast-to-coast nation. All right. So that's part of it. And who was the president? One of the early presidents that was a great believer in manifest destiny. James K. Polk. You guys are really smart. Good job. So James K. Polk, he becomes president. Young Hickory from Tennessee, very expansionist, wants to see our nation grow because he is a great believer in manifest destiny. And in order to do this, to become a coast-to-coast nation, there is some territory that is in dispute or is coveted by America. So what is one of the territories that is in dispute? Oregon, the Oregon Territory. And James K. Polk, he was running on the campaign platform of 54-40 or fight was his slogan. But eventually, we settle on the 49th parallel, and the United States takes this part of the Oregon Territory. Okay, so that gets settled largely. But it's not all. There's still a lot of land yet to be claimed by the United States. California was the main place that James K. Polk was interested in. All right, along with the other followers of manifest destiny. What was so great about California? We don't know about gold yet, because that was in 1849, literally 4 years away. It's large, okay. It is a coastal area, and so there's a lot of spacious bays. What was the largest bay that was most coveted by the Americans? San Francisco. Good for farming, California? A good bit of it is, pretty verdant, fertile valleys. Now, obviously, there's Death Valley in California, which, is the lowest desert in North America. You don't want that. But, it's a large area. And you get the sequoia trees, the redwood forest. California's pretty awesome, okay? So, we want it. What should we do? If you're President Polk, you want California. California belongs to who? Mexico. How do you get it?
Take it.
That's not very nice.
Fight a war.
Maybe let's try something else before that.
Ask.
Ask! Hey, can we buy this from you? Whatever, you see something that one of your buddies has, and you want it, you're like, hey, you interested in selling that? Sometimes your friends will be like, yeah, sure, name me a price. And sometimes your friends will be like, nah, man, why are you even asking me? How do you think Mexico responded? No, man, why are you even asking me? So, we'll get to that. So there's also another area of land that was also in dispute between the United States and Mexico, aside from California, and that was Texas. Deadlock with Mexico over Texas was further tightened over boundaries, okay? And this boundary dispute ultimately is what leads to the Mexican-American War, okay? All right, so there are two rivers here in southern Texas, all right? Well, there's more than two, but there's two that have to do with this boundary dispute. One river, which is the current boundary between the United States and Texas, is this river. Does anybody know what this river is? That's right. This is the Rio Grande River, and it is the literal boundary between the United States and Texas, or between Mexico and Texas today. So that is the boundary that the United States thought existed between the territory of Texas and Mexico. Okay? All right. Now, Mexico had a different idea as to what the boundary should be. Oops. Mexico thought the Nueces River or Nueces River should be the boundary. That is this from Corpus Christi. It kind of goes over like this. So there is a pretty significant area of land right here that is in dispute, as in who owns it. America thinks it belongs to. So if this is the boundary that Mexico thinks. Oh. And this is the boundary the United States think. If you are living like right here, where are you?
The Republic of Texas.
Well, if you ask somebody from Mexico, you're in Mexico. If you ask somebody from the United States, you're in the United States. That's a problem. This is a boundary dispute. Okay? So lots of things, a lot of moving parts here, okay? You got California, you got Oregon, you got Texas. All of these things are going on at the same time. So, James K. Polk sends a man by the name of John Slidell, John, John Slidell, Slidell. And he sends him to Mexico to meet with the Mexican leadership. And he says, hey, John, I want you to offer $25 million for California. Just for California. And if you can get as much property to the east, if you can get Nevada, Arizona, if you can get some of that, awesome. But we definitely want to get California $25 million bucks. So John Slidell's like, no problem, President Polk. He goes to Mexico, and how is he received? Poorly. In fact, the Mexican people would not even permit John Slidell to present his insulting proposition. He didn't even get to ask them. They knew why he was there. They didn't even want to hear the dollar amount. Go away. Can you understand that feeling? Yeah, but can you understand why the Mexican people feel that way? What if, Canada sent somebody to Washington, D.C., was like, we want to buy, I don't know, Massachusetts. Seems like a cool place. We want to buy Massachusetts. How's $100 billion sound? $100 billion? What about $1 trillion? Give you $1 trillion for Massachusetts. What do you think? Get out of here, Canada. Don't insult us. Massachusetts, home to so much American history. We're not selling it. So, that is, Mexico feels insulted by our, just asking. How does America feel? Insulted, because they wouldn't even listen to our proposition. So now James K. Polk is frustrated. And he has to prepare for a showdown. And on January the 13th, 1846, January 13th, 1846, he orders, because he's the president and he's the commander-in-chief of our military, he orders 4,000 men under General Zachary Taylor to go across the Nueces River and go down to the border of the Rio Grande River. which is right here, near Matamoros. It's Matamoros, Mexico today. Okay. 4,000 troops cross the Nueces River and go to the Rio Grande River. What's the big deal? Hey, if you're Mexico, what is that? An invasion. But if you're James K. Polk, what can you say? We're defending our border. Pretty slick, huh? Because what can he get out of this? He can get a war. All right. So, it's not all set in stone that they're going to be fighting just because they're there. He has to, he goes before Congress and he asks them to declare war after he already sent them. And he says, look, here's why I want war. They insulted my ambassador. John Slidell came back in tears. No, I'm just kidding. But they insulted him. And, remember the Alamo? They owe us. They owe us. And how do you think Congress responded to his request for a declaration of war? We'd feel a lot better if they were killing Americans. That's basically the response. They would feel a lot better if Mexico would fire the first shot. That very evening, as fate would have it, news of bloodshed arrives. How convenient. Now, as to whether or not this bloodshed was fabricated or maybe not fabricated, but it did happen, but was, kind of enticed. It's not entirely sure. But what was reported was that Mexican troops had crossed the Rio Grande River and attacked General Taylor, and 16 Americans were killed or wounded. So now, James K. Polk goes before Congress again and says, despite all our efforts to avoid violence and a clash with our neighbors to the south, hostilities have been forced upon our country, and American blood has been spilled on American soil. Those are his actual words. American blood on American soil. So he felt justified in, I'm not going to say lying, bending the truth. If that's what it took to get the public to support this war. Not everyone was convinced. There were several congressmen that were like, I don't know about this, James. Can you tell me again exactly the spot on the map? And there was this one guy, this gangly, ugly guy from Illinois who was a congressman at that time. And he had a map, and he was like, I want you to show me on this map where blood was spilled on American soil. Because technically, if it was down here, this is the area in dispute. And James K. Polk was like, it's right here somewhere. American blood is spilled, man. You guys know who that congressman was that doubted James K. Polk? Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln. They called him Spotty Lincoln because he wanted to know the spot on the map where blood had been spilled. So, does James K. Polk provoke war? You could make that argument. Yeah. So, the war itself was not the most. Well, here's the spot resolutions. The war itself, not the great, very fantastic war. But there's some pretty interesting stuff that happens. Like, You guys remember General Santa Anna? All right, he was like the guy who invaded the Alamo and the one that we captured. He was the leader of Mexico. In 1846, he had been exiled from Mexico and was living in Cuba. And he was actually living with his teenage bride in Cuba. And he let it be known that if America would let him back in to Mexico, that he would sell out the Mexican people and like tell them to not fight and make the war over a lot better, make the war over a lot quicker. Incredibly, James K. Polk believes him and allows Santa Anna back into Mexico, where he double crosses the United States and like rallies the Mexican people to try to fight back against the Americans to defend their home soil. Oh, Santa Anna. But as far as like the operations of war in the Mexican-American War, which is what this is, America was almost completely successful. With leaders like Stephen Kearny, Captain John C. Fremont, and the greatest hero of the Mexican-American War, General Zachary Taylor, who spearheaded the main thrust into Mexico. He has a cool nickname too. You guys know his? Old Rough and Ready. Old Rough and Ready. He's called that because he has a very iron constitution, incredibly unsoldierly in appearance, rarely combed his hair. He was known to wear Mexican straw hats with his uniform to keep the sun off of him. He just wore this big ratty-looking hat. This is a general, not exactly standard issue from the United States military to wear a Mexican sun hat. It's a uniform. But he fought his way across the Rio Grande into Mexico, where he met, Santa Anna's troops. And I'm not going to say every battle was a massive victory, but largely they were. This is kind of a bad map, is very much out of focus. But, up here's California, okay? Down here is like Mexico City, right here in the middle of the country. We conquered all the way down to there and then some. We basically conquered the entire country, conquered it, overtook it, defeated their soldiers in battle. Historically, when this happens, what happens to that territory? It belonged to the people who did the conquering, okay? But America being America, for a variety of reasons, when the war ultimately comes to an end, it comes to an end with the treaty called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which was signed on February the 2nd, 1848. It was signed by Santa Anna after receiving a $10,000 bribe, which he pocketed. The terms of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo are kind of stunning, breathtaking, if you will. All right, so remember what the argument was, okay? We were arguing over Texas and California. First part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is that America has title to Texas, and that's over. It's going to be the Rio Grande River. Texas belongs to America. It's no longer a territory in revolt. That's one thing. In addition, do you see this border, this boundary line here that I'm kind of tracing out? All of this land is going to be ceded to the United States. So let me trace it out one more time. Let me get the laser pointer. So right here. All of this is going to be given to the United States. Okay? That's one half of their country. We took one half of Mexico. Took it. Now, usually, whenever somebody wins a war and they receive land, they just take it. America gives them money as part of this. We give them $15 million. Why?
Yes, we're just nice.
Why? Are we nice?
That was nice.
Guilt. I think guilt, guilty conscience, and the old Anglo-Saxon spirit of fair play. So Mexico was once upon a time offered $25 million for just California. They get $15 million, but we take a lot more. We receive California, these states, California, Nevada, Utah, parts of Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. $15 million. Not too bad. And as far as wars go, the Mexican-American War was a small one. It cost about 13,000 American lives over the course of the entire war. The majority, like 70 to 80% of those lives were not taken by bullets. They were taken by disease. So as far as the actual battles go, there were battles and people did die. But the majority of American deaths were because of disease. But as far as the compensation America receives from the deaths of those brave American souls, it's enormous. It is an enormous compensation. So all America's total expanse, which was already vast before the Mexican-American War, I mean, this was probably a greater amount of land than the Louisiana Purchase. And good land. California, Texas. These are important places. So, a sharp... And all of this is due to manifest destiny. You can point to manifest destiny and say, this is why. This is why we're taking this land. This is why America is growing. So, another thing that's important about the Mexican-American War, it's taken place from 1846 to 1848. We're 12 years away from the American Civil War. So this is like a proving ground. This is like a schoolroom for the American Civil War. The fighting that takes place in Mexico provides valuable field experience for a lot of officers that become generals in the forthcoming Civil War. People like Captain Robert E. Lee, Lieutenant Ulysses S. Grant, both fought in this Mexican-American War. And provides them with valuable experience. So, Mexico, for quite some time, does not forget the injustice they feel was done upon them by their northern enemy that tore away from them half of their country. Honestly, though, the United States conquered all the way down to here. They could have taken it all. Instead, they take half. Okay? So, we had conquered down to here. We gave them all this back. All right? Could have taken it all. So, but long-memoried Mexicans have never forgotten the northern enemy that tore away half of their country. And, the war also marked a pretty ugly turning point in foreign relations between the United States and Latin America. Before the Mexican-American War, Latin American nations just kind of looked at America as, complacent, even friendly. After this, they were increasingly suspicious of the colossal nation to the north, as they see them as greedy and untrustworthy and bullies who will lie, cheat, and do whatever they can to steal the land from them. That is an effect of this. Another important thing that comes out of the Mexican-American War, which is the most ominous thing, for bad for the future, ominous, is the issue of slavery rearing its ugly head. Quarreling over slavery and the extension of slavery erupts after the Mexican-American War. Why? What is the current law on the books as it relates to how slavery can extend?
All states under the Missouri line.
That's right, the Missouri Compromise of 1820. And here's Missouri. And according to the Missouri Compromise, what does it say?
Any state south of it.
That's right. If you're south of this 3630 line, slavery has the potential to exist. If you're north of this, slavery has the potential, is not allowed. It's forbidden. The majority of territory claimed out of the Mexican-American War is north or south of this line? South. Do you see how this is going to cause some fear and problems in the American government? One such person who foresees this is a legislator from the state of Pennsylvania, and his name's David Wilmot. And shortly after the war started, while the war was still going on, Wilmot proposes an amendment. He proposes a law. Because he's from Pennsylvania, and he's fearful of a southern slaveocracy. So he introduces an amendment which says that any territory taken from Mexico should forever be free. That slavery may never exist in any territory taken from Mexico. This is called the Wilmot Proviso, as it's just an amendment to a bill that was, just like an attachment. Why is it not called the Wilmot Law? Because it never passes. Never became federal law. It was passed twice in the House, but not in the Senate. And this causes a great amount of distrust between the North and South, as almost regardless of what your political party was. There were Whigs in the North and Whigs in the South, and when this Wilmot Proviso comes up, those Whigs are split in half. It would be like the Democrats and Republicans, and Democrats in the North and Democrats in the South are split as opposed to united. And so slavery causes massive problems. So in a broader sense, you could say that the Mexican-American War are like the opening shots of the Civil War. And Mexico poisons our country. All of the problems that come about as a result of taking Mexico, and all the land issues and the slavery and how we're going to build railroads and all that is called Santa Anna's revenge, because of the problems it causes our nations. Santa Anna's revenge. All the discord that is caused throughout our nation. Okay? All right, questions on Mexican-American War? All right. So, President Polk, he serves his 4-year term, and as you know by his own health problems and his personality and demeanor, being President of the United States destroys his health. Completely destroys his health. Broken in health by overwork and chronic diarrhea, which he suffered from. He only serves one term as president and chooses not to run in 1848. Now what political party was James K. Polk? He's young Hickory, who created the Democratic Party. Old Hickory.
Jackson.
Yeah. So he's just like him, so he's a Democrat. And the Democrats select Lewis Cass to run. Veteran of War of 1812, senator and diplomat of wide experience. And they came up with some pretty, I don't know if I'd call them clever, but nicknames. They called him like General Jackass instead of General Cass. Anything that they could make to rhyme with that, the Whigs were always on it. But Cass is the father of this thing called popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty. Today, it's a big part of our nation. But it's not in the Constitution. But it's just simply the idea that a people in a given district should determine how they want to live their lives, how they want things to happen. And so what happens is the idea of popular sovereignty gets applied to slavery. Let the people of a given area determine if they want to have slavery or not. Sounds like a cure, doesn't it? Let the people decide. Is that what could possibly be more democratic? Hey, you live in Texas, you want to have slavery? We're going to have a vote. If most of the people in Texas vote they want slavery, then Texas will have slavery. That's popular sovereignty. Sounds good, right? What sounds bad about it? You guys aren't answering me. What's wrong with it? Is there anything wrong with letting the people decide? Doesn't seem like it. In fact, popular sovereignty is called a panacea. 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 You guys know what the word panacea means? It's a cure-all. Miracle work, miracle cure. A panacea. And they see popular sovereignty as the way to solve the problems of slavery. Does it work? No. I mean, we obviously start shooting at each other over it. So, no, it doesn't work. But that's kind of what we're going to look at the next 12 years of American history, is how popular sovereignty doesn't work. Okay, so anyway, you got Lewis Cass. He's going to be the Democrat. You got brand new war hero from the Mexican-American War. He's going to be the Whig Party candidate, and his name is Zachary Taylor. He's the Whig. And, dust off Martin Van Buren one more time. He's going to run as a free soiler. Doesn't win any states. Not one. So, the Whigs cash in on Taylor fever. He's a war hero. He's the man. Hero of Buena Vista. Never been in politics. Is that a mark in his favor? It is. He hasn't upset anybody. He hasn't said anything to make anybody angry. Whereas the most famous and popular of the Whigs, Henry Clay, has he been in politics? Yes, since the year 2. Yeah, he's made too many speeches and made too many enemies. So they choose Zachary Taylor, and he wins the election. He wins the election and the popular vote. And you can see by the Electoral College map how it plays out for him. Okay? Both Democrats and Whigs all kind of skirted the issue of slavery because they didn't want to divide their votes. You can see that people in the South and people in the North are both voting for Zachary Taylor because he just makes no mention of slavery. He doesn't even talk about it. Okay? Whereas Martin Van Buren is running on the free soil platform, And that's exactly what he means. Free soil. It's unpopular and doesn't garner any votes. Okay? All right, so Zachary Taylor becomes president of the United States. And during his presidency, one of the, I don't want to say one of the greatest, but one of the more important events in American history that changes the entire landscape of our country happens. And it happens in 1849. They named a football team in San Francisco after this event. Yeah, the San Francisco 49ers, because of what happens in 1849. Actually, gold is discovered in 1848, and then word spreads, and in 1849, people begin to pour into California. Pour. The discovery of gold on the American River near Sutter's Mill, California, in early 1848, blows the cover off of California. As gold fever afflicts many Americans and many people on planet Earth, as it's not just Americans that are flooding into California. Gold fever, however, was unfortunately followed by actual real fevers when they arrive. And there were some miners that got rich. Some. Lots of other people did get rich. Who are the people getting rich?
People selling supplies.
The people selling the stuff to the miners. You need shovels and pickaxes and pitchforks, and you need your laundry done. You need clothes. You need something to eat. You need pots, pans. You need stuff to survive, supplies, so that you can survive out near your claim, which was typically out in the middle of nowhere. And pretty much the overnight inpouring of tens of thousands of people into California completely overwhelmed the government of California. First of all, California had just recently been won from Mexico. When did California officially belong to the United States? The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. When was that? 1848. When was gold discovered? 1848. So did we have a lot of time to get laws and sheriffs and governors and law enforcement? No. And now all of a sudden, what we did have there, which would you be like, all right, imagine Sophia. Okay? Sophia. We got a mayor, 2 or 3 council members. We got 4 or 5 police officers, 3 police officers, I don't know. A volunteer fire department. Now I want you to imagine 10,000 people coming to Sophia every day for the next year. So by the end of the year, the population of Sophia is, I don't know, if it's 10,000 people a day for 365 days, how many people is that? 365,000 people now living in Sophia with 3 police officers. Same, I don't know, 3 million people. I don't know. I don't do math. That's why I asked you guys. 10,000 people a day, 365 days. Okay, you guys get the point?
Yeah.
The sewers of, imagine the sewer systems of Sophia. They can't handle it. They wouldn't be able to handle this kind of inpouring, just like the people and governments of California, which was not even a state. It was just a territory that was part of Mexico like a week earlier. And now all of this people are just pouring in. And the people that are pouring in are not always, Boy Scouts. Many of them are virtueless, lawless people. whether they be men or women. So there's going to be an outburst of crime, and crime inevitably resulted in this area from the presence of so many miscreants, outlaws, and lack of law enforcement. So a large part of living in California was vigilante justice. If somebody wrongs you, what do? You call the police, you go get them back. That's really the only way that a lot of violence was discouraged, fear of retribution. So there were lots of lawless killings, but very few actual legal punishments handed out. But I don't want you to think that it's just a horrible place. A majority of people that were going were decent and law-abiding citizens that needed protection from the government. And in 1849, the leadership of California drafts their own state constitution. And that state constitution excludes slavery. The people of California did not want slavery. But with this massive migration into California, what happens to the population of California? It goes up. When California applies for admission to the United States of America as a state, and their population is very high, what's going to happen to the balance of power in Congress, particularly in the House? It's going to shift to favor whom?
California.
Free states.
Free. Yeah. Non-slave states. Okay? So, another compromise is born, and we will discuss that compromise tomorrow.